Okay. So what's up, guys? We're here to talk about DAO's infrastructure and mainstream adoption. So before I get into it, I kind of want to give an intro of the speakers. So if you guys can give a quick intro of like where you're from, what your company is, what it does, and yeah, we'll start from there.
Cool. Hi, my name is Kay. I'm the co-founder of Contribution Labs. We are building tools that empower digital and internet native communities. So specifically, we have two products called Mint Kudos and Deform. Mint Kudos is a way for you to celebrate achievements via NFTs, soulbound tokens. And Deform is a way for Web3 communities to collect information in the form of forms and surveys. And I'm also from Tokyo, and I grew up in Singapore, actually. Yeah.
Hey everybody, my name is Paul Kim. I'm the founder of Notifi. We're the Web3 Twilio, so we do notifications and messaging as a service. I'm from the States, but I guess my parents were Korean. So, but yeah, I think one of the tools that we do for DAO specifically is to send messages about proposals, reminders, announcements, so that participation goes up and build a community.
Hey everyone. Hello. Hey everyone, my name is YY. So I'm head of business development for Switchboard. So what Switchboard does is we are a permissionless, multi-chain and customizable Oracle protocol. So the type of data that we brought on chain is not just price data. For anything niche, data can be as well as sports data, weather data, anything can be brought on chain as well. So other than that, we also do verifiable randomness, so VRF as well.
My name is Ray. I'm from California, Orange County. I'm Korean American. I've been living in Orange County for most of my life, and then I'm living in South Korea now with my family. So, and then I have a social media marketing agency, but we switched to Web3 full time this past year. I made a few good investments and bad investments in Web3. So. But yeah, I think Web3 is the future. So with that, I kind of wanted to ask you guys, like, what brought you guys into Web3, crypto NFTs, and why do you think this is the future along with DAOs?
Yeah, I wish I had like a very touching story, but I used to work at Microsoft in Seattle, and I started working on Windows, which is obviously now very old and archaic. But so when I was looking for different teams within the company, one of the teams that I was looking at was the Microsoft Blockchain team. And I kind of just got immersed into it, and I learned about technology. And then I actually then learned more about like how the ecosystem is and what people think, the ideologies. And growing up in different places all around the world, I've just seen like people from different cultures, and a lot of people couldn't really participate just because of where they were born or their circumstances. And I just felt like Web3 could be, in an ideological standpoint, could be a way to kind of level the playing field and allow people that couldn't participate before to also participate from the beginning. So I know that not everything's like that right now. There's definitely issues with broad like participation from everybody, but I think this space is going in the right direction. So yeah, I'm very hopeful.
I'm probably in the same boat as that too. I think I also come from like core Web 2 companies. Also spent some time at Microsoft, but in general, I think there's a lot of openness and transparency that Web3 offers, especially in like identity and data ownership. So as you can kind of see like things evolving, even NFTs was a great use case, but the future is basically allowing for people to participate without restrictions, right? And I think DAOs is a great example of that. Anybody could join a DAO, and I think a lot of that information and data is on chain, so it has full transparency so that people aren't caught aware, like if things happen against different principles. So that's kind of the main reason why I came in. I started in Web3 actually about 10 months ago, so relatively new.
I don't have any like crazy stories like Web2 core or anything. But I think what Switchboard does is, since we are a permissionless Oracle protocol, building like building like a permissionless layer for building blocks and developer tooling for developers for Web3, I think it's really important to have like not just like a centralized identity to manage all these infrastructure tooling. Instead, to have like a DAO that runs all these things will be the future, such that all these tools can be permissionless and not just one central authority managing everything else.
I got into Web3 like a year ago. I started researching about NFTs, and then I learned about this platform called Vivi. Vivi is like a premium digital collectible app, and they have like major brand licenses with like DC, I think Marvel, and just a bunch of different brands. And so I got into flipping NFTs, and then I got into like OpenSea NFTs and into like shitcoins, meme coins, and just, kind of degen, a lot of degen stuff. And then I realized that, there's a lot of opportunity not just for making money, but also I think this is the future. Just like how I got into social media early on and was able to grow accounts pretty quick. I think that Web3 is it's just a natural evolution from Web 2 to Web 3, and so yeah. And then I started building communities around NFTs and crypto and things like that. So to get into this into the topic of this panel, what is a DAO? A DAO stands for decentralized autonomous organization, right? But can you guys explain that to a fifth grader? How would you explain that in very simple terms, and why is that important? Why do we need, if you can kind of elaborate on that?
All right, let me try my best. So, like Ray said, DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. At its core, it is an organization of human beings, right? So the difference between any organization and a DAO, I think people have different definitions and probably would agree or disagree. But I think the most important part is decentralized and autonomous, right? So decentralized, there is a very degree of decentralization, but really it's how can multiple people come together, vote on something towards a common goal? And how can you automate as much of that as possible? And I think we'll talk about this as well, but there's just a varying degree of what the D and the A stands for, and in different forms and shapes. But I think at its core, it's just a group of people that want to vote on something to achieve a common goal. Probably not good for a 5-year-old.
Yeah, because I think Web3 can be quite confusing for a lot of people. There's a very high barrier to entry, to educate yourself how to make a MetaMask, how to buy crypto, I was used to self-educating myself, so that's kind of how I learned on my own. But for the majority of people, it's a lot of steps, and that's why there's a high barrier to entry. So yeah, I mean, with that, one of the first DAOs was called the DAO. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but this was one of the first DAOs, and they raised, I think, over $150 million. But there was a hacker, there was an attacker, and they drained around 50 million from the DAO. And because of that hack, Vitalik decided to do a hard fork, and that's what led to Ethereum Classic and Ethereum, which we know today. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, or the DAO, or kind of the problems of, how DAOs first started and things like that? Or good?
I think so. I'm not too familiar with the details of how the DAO hack happened, but in general, the A that we talked about, the automation part, it's there's a balance, because if you try to automate everything, well, that's great because a lot of people can coordinate very easily, but also at the same time, if you have a bug or if there's a hack, well, it might be irreversible, or there might be a hostile takeover, and that's it for the DAO. So, there has to be kind of a checks and balances, and I don't think every DAO has quite figured out what the right balance of that is.
Yeah, I don't think any DAO has figured out anything, to be honest. No, I mean it's a social experiment right now, right? It's a test to see what can be done, what can't be done, and there's a lot of good examples of things that like there was another DAO that happened. A DAO was created when there was a hack, and the vote went through, proposal went through, but it was never executed. Right. In fact, they actually had like a secondary vote to recall that first proposal. So I think we're still in a discovery phase. I think the Gen 2 of DAOs will probably be coming into more fruition. But as we know it today, I know this is a very contrarian thought, but there's no example that I see that DAOs today work in any capacity. I think it's just completely in a sense of everyone has too much to say. Voter participation is actually extremely low to get proposals even passed. And all the stuff that the DAOs are supposed to fix in kind of the real world kind of relegated into just Discord experiences. So one of the things that we're working on is the main reason we got into this space was we wanted to get people to come and vote and participate. Right? I think the average vote participation was 2% of a DAO, right? That means that 98% of the people aren't voting, right? Which kind of goes against the concept of a DAO. So one of the tools that we did was hey, let's send you an actual text message when a proposal comes up, and therefore people are aware of it and they can actually participate. But those are tools that we're missing from the get-go, right? And I think because of all these things, enhancing Web3's experience is really crucial now amongst everything else.
Do you guys want to kind of talk about what current problems you see DAOs having and how your companies are fixing? You kind of
I think I just talked about that. But one more thing is sub DAOs. I think there's DAOs within a DAO. Okay. I think it's getting a little too meta. So.
I think another pointer is some protocols or just teams, they rush too fast into establishing a DAO instead of, I think there's no balance, there's no right balance between starting off a team or company having central authority over your project and then slowly transiting to a DAO, or some of them just dive straight into a DAO structure. So it really depends on what you're doing. But I think that is one of the problems that we face, or companies or teams face. They don't know what's the best route to take to establish a company and then having authority over your project first, or diving straight into the DAO whereby you just lose all your control, but then you slow down in your process of building everything else. So I think this is one of the major problems that teams face in general.
Yeah, touching upon what Paul had said earlier about voter participation, I think there's also issues fundamentally with how voting works in many DAOs. The obvious, easiest solution to voting is you buy some tokens, and then based on the number of tokens you own, you can vote, right? But then you can easily imagine you can just buy up all the tokens and then have a hostile takeover. You can have a bunch of whales, manipulate votes according to their interests. Or even if whales don't do that, right? If you're a voter and you're okay, I own 0.0001% of the vote, well, my vote's not going to mean anything. So even if there is a vote, I might not do anything, right? It's I'm powerless. So I think, there needs to be more experimentation done to figure out what kind of best voting mechanisms there are. One of the things that, our company is interested in is how can we make voting based on participation or contribution based. So instead of saying, okay, you buy some tokens to vote, it's well, how much have you done? How much have you contributed? And what is that worth relative to other people? And then maybe that can turn into voting. Obviously, that's easier said than done, but we're kind of trying to provide the tools so that DAOs who want to experiment with that kind of voting can do it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, overall, you mentioned earlier, it's a whole, this space is just a bunch of social experiments. But, all we can do to kind of push that along is either be the ones experimenting, or if not, then provide the tools to experiment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the thing is it's too new, right? And I think one of the biggest things about why, the great parts about what DAOs are is that it shows open transparency, right? So it shows who's voting. It shows what your like weight is in terms of like ownership, and in, you know, what influences you have. I think that's like a tremendous like step ahead of what it used to be in the past, because everything was behind closed doors. You never knew what was happening. Even if you had a vote, right? But at least DAOs you get to see inside behind the curtains. It's just a shame that, you know, we don't actually have like a tangible solution that works now, right?
Yeah.
But confident that a lot of builders are trying to focus on that.
Yeah. You know, concrete example of what you just mentioned is like MakerDAO. So, you know, I'm not a part of MakerDAO, so I don't vote or anything, but I was just looking at their discourse forums and kind of just looking through all the proposals, and, you know, like every quarter or season or whatever they segment their time with, basically they come together and they're like, okay, this working group is part of MakerDAO, it's gonna do this, here are the leaders, and this is the budget we're asking for, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, which is just like so much transparency. I'm not even a part of MakerDAO, and I understand what everyone's trying to do and why, and how much they're getting, and how people are voting, which is like, they're almost kind of running themselves as like a company, because they do have like kind of hierarchy within what people might call sub-DAOs or guilds or working groups. I don't know, people have different names, but it's that with extreme transparency, which just makes it possible for like other people with good ideas to join. So I think that in itself is already a massive improvement from what we have today.
Mm-hmm. So you're basically saying like DAOs allow everyone to have a voice, essentially?
It gives people the opportunity, and I don't think it's perfect. Like, for example, I don't know, like I join a DAO, or I try to join a DAO, I go to their Discord, and it's like, well, there's like 100 channels. Like, where do I even start? And there's like an announcements channel where it's like, here's how you start, and there's like 50 links that you have to read through. So it's not you know, as friendly as you want it to be.
That's what we're trying to fix, right?
There you go.
We're actually trying to kill Discord for DAOs, because like, I think in general, when you join a DAO, you join a Discord and you have no idea what's going on. So ultimately, you just keep it on mute, right? So I'm part of like 7 DAOs, like NFT DAOs as well. And I think the sad part is, like, over time, you just kind of like, you know, take a step back and you don't really participate anymore, which ruins the whole point of the DAO in the first place, right? So I think there has to be a better experience, right? Like, there has to be ways where you can engage with the community more, see what's going on, and definitely participate when you can, right? I think now it's just because of too much noise and complexity, people just get turned off, right? So that's kind of the main reasons why I think DAOs is today, like, apart from, like, you know, like the 1% of people who really care, you know, the 99% of holders just kind of like phase out.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, like, there's just too many platforms that people have to use. Like, just Discord is already overwhelming. Then it's like, well, in order to vote, please go to Snapshot. In order to like try to talk about like a proposal, go to Discourse. Here's like 10 other tools that you have to use. Like,
and there's like a private group for like Telegram for all the whales to talk about the proposals. It's pretty complex.
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm gonna kind of open it up for the people to ask, but before that, where can people go and find out more about you guys and your projects and things like that?
Why do you want to start off?
You can find us on switchboard.xyz. That's our website. Twitter as well @switchboardxyz. Paul?
Notify.network. I don't really have a social media, but yeah, let's go to our Twitter.
For us, so like I mentioned in the beginning, there's two platforms. The first one is Mint Kudos. It's mintkudos.xyz. Also, if you actually go outside this room, there's like this massive board with like 2 QR codes. The first link, you get a free kudos for participating in this conference. I'm not saying it's gonna have any value, but, you know, it's cool to claim, right? It's participation. If you maybe it'll be a part of like voting for Bu Zhi DAO, who knows? And the second link is a form that you can go to. That's dform.cc. That's basically the new product that we just made for Web3 forms and surveys. I didn't give enough context on that, but basically one of the things, and I'm going back to like some of the issues that DAOs have, is that, you know, like you said, we still have time, right?
I feel like we could talk about problems of DAOs.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah. So it's on topic. It's on topic. All right, good. So one of the problems that DAOs have is, you know, like you said earlier, only certain people who really care participate, but that also means that the loudest person wins. right? And the point of a DAO is for everybody to participate and try to voice their opinions. So what we're trying to solve there is for community managers or people who are like heading DAOs to be able to get more feedback from other types of people that aren't already vocal in the form of like forms and surveys. So, forms and surveys, like, Google Forms, Typeform is very simple. But, imagine if you can create a form and you only want a response, you only want a response from people who have your NFT, your like DAO token, right? Then like you can like basically filter out the noise. Also, you can do things like, okay, well, 100 people responded to my survey. I kind of want to know more insights about them. Maybe 20 of the people have used your DeFi product in the last 6 months. That's all on chain. That's available, right? That's the beauty of blockchain. It's like all public data that we can analyze to give you more insights. So we're basically trying to help people, DAOs and not DAOs, like any digital community for that matter, with like on-chain data, to be able to analyze and try to understand their community better. Sorry, that just went into kind of like
that's all good.
talking about the product.
Do your thing. So yeah, and me, I'm on Instagram, Ray.HN, or Twitter, Rayon_ETH. So with the last like few minutes, I kind of want like to see if anyone wants to ask questions about DAOs or infrastructure. That's cool.
What do you think are the biggest use cases for forms and surveys today within Web3 communities?
Merch. I was kidding.
Actually, that is like a very valid use case. We've seen that as well. I think it can be anything you want it to be. Like we've seen like, for example, like this Taipei Blockchain Week. Like, we want to collect information about your participation, how you feel, what you're trying to learn, right? That's definitely valuable. From a DAO, let's say you want to get kind of a heat or a signal on how people feel about a proposal before you actually make them. That's actually very valuable, and you can do that by, token gating it and seeing like, okay, you can only respond with this if you have this DAO token, or if you have like over XYZ tokens. I think the use cases are endless.
Hi, Jay from Orange County here. Go Orange County. My question is actually very similar. We talked a lot about the problems with DAOs, right? But what are some DAOs that you guys see that are on the right path? Like, what are some examples for the future?
Bu Zhi DAO? No, there's a couple DAOs out there. So I'm part of this thing called the Monkey DAO for Solana. It's an NFT PFP project. And what it's evolved into is a DAO full of builders. It's like probably really unique in that sense where most holders are founders inside the Solana ecosystem. So therefore, like, we've created this like, sub DAO almost of basically founders working, collaborating with each other, and trying to boost the ecosystem more so. It's super unofficial. It just kind of evolved into it, but like, that's a great example of how DAOs can be really powerful, and how membership also like gates a lot of like some of the direction that the DAO is going into.
I have 2 examples in mind. The first one is called City DAO. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. For people who don't know, City DAO is a DAO that's trying to create a city in, is it Wyoming, right? Yeah, Wyoming in the US as a DAO. And they're one of the first DAOs that were incorporated as a DAO in the state of Wyoming, which is pretty insane if you ask me. And they were able to go from an idea to getting people together on the internet over Discord, all the way to literally buying land with the DAO money. Like that's pretty crazy to me. And it's actually one of the first DAOs that I've ever participated in. And I think they have a cool future ahead of them. And I think right now they got the land, but now they're in the phase of like trying to actually build like stuff on the land. And I think that's where it's going to be really interesting, is because each person owns like a parcel of land. And I think you get to decide like what you can do with the parcel, and then we'll find out what it's like to actually build a city with like a ton of people versus like a few people like coordinating everything. So very, very interesting experiment, and I think they can try to prove whether a DAO at large scale can work. The second that I'm thinking of is kind of less of a DAO where they're trying to like accomplish one mission, but rather like a group of people that came together to like work together. That's like some people might call it like a service DAO. One of the examples I'm thinking of is Vector DAO, which is a design service DAO. So it's basically a bunch of designers that came together as a DAO, and then all they do is basically they take projects from different clients and like they do design work. But the interesting thing here is that they actually take compensation, sometimes in the form of like other tokens. So let's say other Web3 projects are like, hey, can you help us design something? It's like, well, instead of giving you money, or USDC or fiat, we'll give you like tokens. So then basically the DAO itself is also like incentive aligned with like the clients that they're serving. So I thought that was an interesting way to come together as a DAO.
Yeah, I think.
Hey everyone, I'm Jay, co-founder at Rossetto. We're a Web3 community-led research platform. Question is, most DAOs I've seen, there's some sort of token involved for governance, for utility. Is it possible to run a DAO without any sort of tokens?
Yes and no. I mean, you can have a DAO, and you can only have like one holder, right? So, like we have one that's a good example of that. We have an NFT that we did for utility, but we also created a DAO for it as well. But all the voting power or the direction of ownership is what we call like Class A shares, right? So. Even though like the NFTs are a gateway into the DAO itself, it doesn't actually have any voting power. The only voting power that it actually has is at the Class A, which actually I own. So yeah, there are like a lot of examples of that, but I think it kind of defeats the purpose of what and DAOs are trying to focus and function on.
I think even if it's not a token, you need some way of measuring voting power. So you need some way to measure whose vote counts more, things like that.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like, most of the voting is for more about, like, record keeping. Not everything is, like, automated, so therefore it doesn't automatically execute any kind of, like, function. So what DAOs are notoriously known for, especially in the DeFi community, is that it actually provides, like, obfuscation, because you can say, like, hey, people voted for something, and therefore we did X, right? It's a way to basically say, the community decided or voted. The definition of who owns the community is questionable because it's all on-chain and anonymous, but people did vote, and we executed against, something of record.
And there's probably not enough time for this, but there's like obviously interesting like issues with that. Like just because the people have spoken, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right decision. There's like ideas like the tragedy of the commons, where everyone acts on their as to their best interest, but that doesn't necessarily associate with the interests of the community. So I think, we're running out of time here, but that's a really big open question mark here. So, we need more experimentation to figure out, okay, how might we best utilize a large group of people, which in an ideal world could have like diverse opinions and could bring together like interesting ideas, but in reality that doesn't necessarily work, and it could lead to bad decisions being made. So I think we just need more experimentation, see what works, what doesn't work, what kind of voting actually makes sense, how do you like bring in as much diverse opinions as possible without kind of like ruining the outcome.
With that, our time is up. So thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.